What's going on, guys? Good evening. We're going to go over the 4-2-3-1 custom tactics. We've got 4 tactics for you today: a defensive, an attacking, and an alternate attacking, like a wide variation of this formation, back to the old school days, and then an ultra attacking or attacking formation to press the ball with. Apologies for a delay. I didn't want to release the video early because PSN servers were down, and I wanted to test it. I wanted to test it out properly. I didn't want to just throw a video out there for the sake of it. You know, I don't do that kind of stuff. So let's just go straight into it. So this will be the defensive one. That's the code over there on the left-hand side. 4-2-3-1 narrow. I wouldn't recommend short passing. I think you would know yourself if you like to use short passing, but it's a very unique thing. I would say for most, 99% balanced or counters where you'd really go. Maybe if you're trying to close the game out, but after the patch, I don't even think there's a need for it. I don't think so. Anyway, balanced on both. Defensive approach, we've not gone to like a 31, 40, and the benefit you can get away with this is you can actually afford to be more attacking because don't forget, naturally speaking, this formation has 2 CDMs. You're very much stable defensively, so you can basically afford to go at a higher depth if you want to. Very, very simple in terms of the roles. We're attacking in a 4-2-3-1 and we're defending in a 4-2-3-1. Advanced forward for the striker.
You want to get better at FC25 now? Before you skip ahead, what if I told you if you don't get better after 1 month, I'll refund your money? That's the Nil Guys guarantee. We got in-depth tutorials that are not even on the YouTube channel. We show you the theory of something and we show you gameplay examples in a structured format. We also go over real-life football examples that apply to the game and exclusive pro gameplay analysis, full gameplay analysis to elevate your game. We teach you everything from the basics to the meta. Come join at patreon.com/NilGuys. Links down below in the description. If you don't get better after 1 month, we'll refund your money. That's the Nil Guys guarantee. Links down below in the description.
Cam's on playmaker balance, so at least that cam is going to come back in defense. If you put a classic 10 or a shadow striker, that player would stay forward, so it wouldn't be really a defensive formation per se. The Lam and the Ram, both of them are balanced. To be honest, I like wide cams in the playmaker position, akin to 4-2-2, and for example, the 4-2-3-1, because they're not as wide as wingers, but they're basically in between a half space. And I really like that. I like to bring them in, use L1 triggers and stuff like that. And I can always use a fullback's forward for width. Both CDMs and holding. You can argue deep line playmaker is defensively better, and that is solely because if you did something like this, they technically, with the ball, they sit deeper and people say, oh, they sit more reserved. But I always like them to be on holding because they sit further ahead. So that way they're in the right position. You can only run there or run backwards. The last thing you want is someone to be a bit too far away because there's a limit. You don't want them to be too far away. And sometimes what happens is when the ball comes in, let's say in midfield, your CDM naturally pushes up indirectly. So because they're deep line playmaker. So what I mean by this is, let's say, for example, this would affect a lot of people. People don't realize. As you can see, a deep line playmaker sits a bit lower compared to the holding CDM. But let's say, for example, you lost the ball and you get turned over and your CDM is deeper. They'd have to naturally shift up to go into the position without the ball. So that's something you got to bear in mind. That is why I still prefer holding CDM for defensive players. And at least that way, if you're getting pressed, you have that player being an outlet in midfield. Otherwise you're going to basically, if you go up against a 4-4-2, or your opponent's left wing, right wing, and 2 strikers up against your back 4, and your opponent's 2 centre mids up against your centre mids as well. And sometimes I feel, especially if you got a strike on cam on shadow striker, there's too much of a gap. That's just my personal preference. People have been asking me in regards to that. That's the defensive tactics. Feel free to copy those. Now, when we move over to the, I put this down as balanced. The difference you can see, we have the cam on shadow striker and we have the fullbacks on balance. So that's what we've done. We kept the holding the same. So it's a very incremental change. What we have also introduced is we put the build-up style to counter, as you can see, the differences. So this is the code for the balance setup. Counter, the depth we've just increased just a little bit, 55, a tad bit. We're not going to high category. We don't need to go too dramatic. We just changed some few key roles. You could use poach if you wanted, but advanced forward. I made the cam a shadow striker, and I put Rashford there for the power shots, but that's irrelevant. Don't worry about that too much. Ignore Zidane for a second as well. And then Tonali and Zidane both as CDMs. Lam and Ram are still going to come back on offense with playmaker. You don't want to go too attacking and leave them on shadow strike or stay forward. And what we've done is we've made it so you basic attack in somewhat of a 3-3-3-1. So the left back would be on balanced. This will help create an overlap on one side. You can also put this player to a false back if you prefer a false back. But I think at least that way you've got 3 players at the back and you have 1 player going forward. You don't even need to do this. To be honest, you can just do it like this And that way, just putting one of the players on a shadow striker and then, for example, making this counter and increasing the depth is more than good enough to make it attacking. So that's one of the key things I wanted to mention. The big mistake people make is when you're like 0-0 and you can't score, they feel like they need to go ultra attacking. No, you don't. You just need to be incrementally going up. So even if you're losing 1-0, you don't need to, for example, go gung-ho and go team press immediately. Just go slightly a bit more attacking. Maybe you have a cam on stay forward, or you got a left back join the attack. That is what you want, those small key differences. That's how people manage the game. That's how pros manage the game as well. And that is why they put everyone on comeback and defense, and they always manage their attacking players with L1 triggers. Remember that. The top tip. Then we have a wide variation. So what I wanted to do is create the same system. We got counter high, that's the code there, 61, just slightly a bit higher. We put the strike on poacher this time, and then we put the number 10 in a classic 10. So this basically plays like a 4-2-1-3. Now, would it be better to have a 4-2-1-3? Yes. But let's say you want to play the 4-2-3-1, and these are only cam positions. Now, Rashford can play left wing and Ranieri can play right wing. But let's say, hypothetically, they were just natural cams and that's all they were. It's very, very hard. But with half wingers, you basically replicate wingers. They're not as good as inside forwards, to be honest with you. But if you like a wide solution, this is very, very good. We put the cam on classic 10. So defensive, your Lamine Ram will come back, but Dembele will still stay on like the stay forward kind of role. We put both the CDMs on deep line playmaker and both the left back and right back on defense. So it's basically just higher depth, bit more advanced. Got the cam on stay forward, making left wing and right wings basically like a makeshift left wing and right wing, and we're keeping the CDMs on deep line playmaker. To be honest, now I don't really push fullbacks forward as much unless you really, really need it. Most of the time, you're not going to need it. So don't feel pressure like, oh, I need to push a fullback going forward. You really don't need to. In fact, I'd probably recommend, as I did with the changes, just keeping the fullbacks on stay back. You yourself would know. It's like kind of like if you got into my car and you drove in my seat and I got long legs and you're not as tall as me, you're going to move the seat forward. You should be doing the same thing with these tactics. If you know, okay, I like to have my fullbacks on balance during the attack, then always make that change. And then we're going to go over to the final one. So the final one is the attacking variation. To be honest, to press, you're better off going with a 4-4-2. But if you really wanted to, in this system press, I've gone with counter and I put the depth to 90. To be honest, I've only tried this out maybe 1 or 2 games. Most of the time I was winning, so I didn't really need to go too attacking. But I would probably recommend maybe something like a 75 is a bit more conservative. But I tested this with 90, but 75 is going to be a bit more conservative. It's not going to make that much of a difference. So one thing I just wanted to mention in regards to that, in fact, maybe I should release this code on my website actually, as opposed to 90 depth, because I know some people just look at the website, copy the code without actually seeing the video. The strikers advance forward, the cams are on shadow striker. I haven't put any of these players, for example, on shadow strikers. You can if you want to, but I feel like sometimes when you have 4 players on stay forward and your opponent is, for example, passing the ball around, taking the mick, you get stuck where your opponent has the ball in between your defensive line, where they can't push up, because if they do, you're going to create massive gaps, and then your forward players are too high, and that is where your opponent can get you sandwiched into that position and force you to commit forward. So that's what I don't personally like. For a pressing formation, just like in real life, when you want to press, you want every single person to be behind the ball, and then you press together in a unit. So I'd much rather prefer them to be on whatever shadows, the cam on shadow strike and the lam and the ram. Put them both either on playmaker or half wingers. And we have one the CDMs on holding, the other one on the deep line playmaker, and then we have both the left back and the right back being wing backs. So the idea behind this is when you have the ball, you're going to have the left back and right back, they're going to go forward, and that's going to push the cams more into the half space to help in the midfield area. So you basically attack with somewhat of a 5, maybe you could argue a 4, sometimes even a 6 if everyone is going forward, but at least this way you have your CDMs in check. Now, if you know that those 4 backs, you're not comfortable with defending, one makeshift change you can do is put centre half defend. So that way, when you defend in that 4-2-3 on your pressing, as soon as you win the ball back, your left back and right back are going to go forward, and then your CDM drops into that position. Me personally, even myself, I would always prefer a 3 at the back. Me personally, just to be safe. because you know how dead easy it is to get through. Even if you're a top tier player with 99 sprint speed centre back, even if you time everything correctly, if your opponent times it right, you can't get through if you don't switch in time. So that is what you can do. The only thing I would say here in the deep line playmaker is get rid of it, because I like that player to be in a same stature, same position. So I can use his players like a Patrick Iharo or like that new Pirlo card. Distributing a ball with a long ball and incisive. So that would be the attacking tactic as well. So that would be basically it. This would be the final codes, and I put them on my website as well. It should be updated hopefully in the next few hours or so. But by the time the video is coming out, I'm probably going to be playing some Kingdom Come Deliverance. Weekend is extended, so I got 2 extra days. Thanks for watching. Take it easy and catch you next time. Peace.